All right, it's showtime. I hope everybody's having a good Friday. Or if you're not watching this on Friday and you're not watching it live and you're tuning in after the fact, I hope that whatever day it is for you is going great. I'm Chad Pytel, the thoughtbot CEO. I'm also a developer. And I am going to be working on internal Rails app that we have in production called Hub. It connects to a lot of different systems. It has our entire company schedule. We're a consulting company. We work on lots of different projects with lots of different companies. And that system is built in Rails. I've been working on it on the stream for the last couple of streams now, working on the ability to, when we start a new project or when we have a long-running project that needs new people or needs a rotation, we can sort of, right now we use a to-do list for the things the scheduling items that need to be done. And that's in Basecamp. And we're moving that inside of the application so that we can eliminate using Basecamp for that. So welcome, Dimitri, again. Thank you for tuning in. I am going to go to the code now. Here we go. We're picking right back up where we left off yesterday. We've got a failing spec. If you didn't watch yesterday or you don't remember, I was saying I love to end with a failing spec because it can show us right where we need to pick up next time. And that's what we've done here. So the spec that is failing is this one right here. When an estimate has someone tentatively assigned, when we then create the staffing need from that estimate, we want to make sure that the person who was tentatively assigned is subscribed to the staffing need, meaning they're going to get comments on it. And so the spec line that's failing is right here. I'm going to hit Command-Shift-L. Sorry. And then we have the spec failure. So that is the failure. So yesterday with Stephanie, I created the create staffing needs background job. And what that does is it loops through the estimates and it creates a staffing need for each estimate. And you can see it copies over the person here if there is a person there. So that's great. That's the person that we want to subscribe now is there. And so what we need to do is we need to set the subscribers. Now, we looked at this yesterday, and it's a subscribable concern. And there's a subscribe method with a person. And so I think we can use that so that we're not manually, and you can see it does unless the person's already subscribed. So if we were to just, so I think we want to reuse that method. Okay, we have create bang here. That's going to throw an exception if it doesn't work. So I think we can just say subscribe the person. Cool. Let's run the spec for that. Cool. So that's passing now. And you can see that the subscribers now include the person who was tentatively assigned. Great. So things are in a pretty good spot. If we go over to our browser, yesterday we cleared out our database, so we don't have any staffing needs right now. But we do have an opportunity with estimates, which is where the staffing needs come from. So let's take a look at that. Yeah. Okay. So we've got estimate for a Rails developer. Nobody's assigned to it yet, for 4 days a week for 12 weeks. We have web design for 4 days a week for 1 week. We've got iOS. So if we go over to our console now and we trigger this job, we should get some staffing needs created automatically from them. So let's go over to the console. We're going to load the opportunity. And I love getting questions in the chat, or if you notice something that's a little off or whatever, feel free to comment on it. Happy to I'll just notice it eventually and get your question answered, or answer your question, or take a look at particularly if I'm stumped. I really appreciate the help of the crowd. So let's load that opportunity. And you can see the opportunity has estimates. So our job takes an opportunity. So we say opportunity, job, create staffing needs, perform now. Okay, that should do it. Undefined method staffing needs for a nil class. Did I not assign opportunity? I thought I did. Okay. Where it's actually a nil class is the project. So on this opportunity, it's not technically one yet, and so the project wasn't created. That's not a real world scenario. Let's see if we have a different one. Yeah. So that's not a real world scenario. In a real world scenario, there will always be a project created. So we can go ahead and assign a project and update that. Oh. Okay. So now if we reload, we're going to have a project now. Let's just make sure. Cool. So we've got a project now. And so we should be able to run that. Okay, so getting an error. So a person was expected, but nil, which is an instance of nil class. So that is the kind of thing where, so what's happening there is what in that new code we just added, there is no person assigned. So this is nil. The subscribe method is getting nil and throwing an error. So we need to decide where we want to handle the nil. We could handle it in this method, or we could handle it where we're not even doing that if there's no person. My instinct actually is to not do it if there's no person, but at the same time, passing subscribe nil seems like it shouldn't error to me. So I want to fix that problem as well. So I'm not exactly sure where the subscribable specs are. So I'm going to look for it in specs. What I subscriptions spec, interest spec, message spec. My guess is that messages here were the first thing that you could subscribe to. Since it's a concern, it's not being tested independently. It's being tested as part of the things that mix it in, which is a little bit of a tricky thing for. So yeah, here's specs for the describe method on an interest, which is like topics that you can comment on or that you can post messages about. So I think I'm going to add the spec here. Does not add a subscriber twice, and then it does not error when given nil. So we're going to have an interest, and we'll say interest.subscribe with a nil. And we're going to expect okay, you got to exit the console. So it expected no exception, and it got active record association type mismatch. So that is fine. And so now we'll go over to the module the module. And so I don't know about you, but whenever I hit an unless and then I start adding multiple things to it, that can get a little confusing. So I want to be careful about that. So like my brain works if not so that is a lot more readable to me than the inverse of that. So I'm going to change that, and I'm going to run the spec again. So Dimitri, you're asking that subscriber can basically be nothing. Yeah, I think it's. I'm not saying it can be nothing, but we want to handle the case where there's actually not a person being passed in, because right now that'll generate an exception. And so my thinking is that shouldn't generate an exception. And so let's make it not generate an exception. That's my thinking behind it. And the side effect of doing that is then our job can stay pretty clean. It doesn't need to know whether there is or is not a person here. It just does the same thing all the time. And it calls subscribe. And then that won't generate an exception. So that's my thinking there. I think you could go either way on it personally, but um, that's my logic process for how to handle that. Okay, so our specs pass for the subscribable, and so now let's go back to the create staffing needs spec. Make sure that passes because we changed um, something that it depends on. Okay. Okay, let's go back to the console now and load the opportunity. And there we go. So now the job successfully ran in the background. Oh, not quite in the background, but successfully ran, created matching staffing needs. So now if we go over to our schedule, we should see, 4. Okay, that wording is going to need to change because it's not 4 projects with staffing needs. They're actually all on the same project. But we see Rails. Okay. So we've got this, and now if we go to create assignment, it'll fill everything out, and we just need to choose who. So that's working. So now, and I was just doing that as a quick check. We actually were in the middle of, um, so we're doing test driven development from the outside in. We had a one level up spec, um, and I closed the file from yesterday. So, but it is the create client and project spec. So, oh, maybe not. Oh, yeah, no, it was project services. So, project services is the class that communicates with external services, uh, or basically handles what happens when projects are updated or created and notifies external services, or over time that has evolved to be things like our messaging system for subscribing and that sort of thing. So if we right here, you can see this is where the scheduling to do item is created in Basecamp using a background job. And so I don't think we ever changed the spec. Oh, we did. Awesome. So Stephanie and I yesterday swapped out or changed the spec. So that passed because it was the for an update, it shouldn't create the staffing needs. And now let's find the other. Here's where it tries to create the staffing needs. We're using this is stubbed out or mocked out here to tell whether that job was created or not, or run or not. And you can see it was never run, which is what we expect. Um, and so this now becomes right. And we should be able to run that spec again. And I'm anticipating that it's going to pass this time. Good. Awesome. So when something is closed and we know a new project is going to start, the estimates are looped through, and uh, the staffing needs are created. We're almost at the point where um, this everything we need in order to launch this feature is working as it, and we're gonna be able to focus more on refinement. Stephanie and I yesterday realized that there are projects that don't do weekly staffing but do hourly staffing. We started to take that into account, but we didn't finish that. So that's one thing that we need to do. And then I want to do things like when we look at the staffing needs, these are actually all on the same project. So I want to group them together in the list and show that by project. And we noticed when we were looking at the schedule that it says for projects with staffing needs, which is incorrect. We actually, and we're going to change the way that that link is. We have a whole new treatment and mod for that. Aniket, thanks for the question. Asks, could you recommend a project idea that's ideal for both resume improvement and learning Ruby on Rails? So I'll answer this question generically, and it's not a specific project idea quite yet. But I really recommend that you choose something that you care about, that you're passionate about. And because when it comes to learning to code, when it comes to learning new things, I think if you're working on something that you actually understand and care about and want to work on, it goes so long of a way to making it so that you can work through those issues and stick with it as you do. So I would think about the things that you work on, um, or that you care about. It could be a side project. It could be if you're a member of a football team, or American football team, or soccer, or whatever sport. Maybe your team needs. There's problems there in terms of team organization or communication. If you're part of another organization or something like that, software doesn't even need to be used, but that can provide the basis for finding a little something that you want to chip away at in terms of an app to solve a particular problem. So hopefully that sparks a project idea for you. It's what I recommend. And especially if you can use the software yourself, it's going to go a long way towards helping you learn. Awesome. Thank you again for the question. I really appreciate it. Okay. So let's tackle that hourly project stuff. Um, One of the things that's a little tricky is, oh, actually, we can use the. I was going to say one of the things that's a little tricky when working on Hub is there's no there. Uh, we need examples to create from. So this uh, project that this is for is currently weekly billing. So let's go and change that to um, hourly billing. Um, oh, okay. So we're going to change that to hourly billing. And okay. So now if we go over those estimates for this project, for this opportunity, I should say, we need to change this to hourly. We'll do like 60 hours. So we're just building out the estimates for this potential project. Okay, so 60 hours of these different things. You can see it automatically adjusted to text that makes sense. And so now if we go to over to the schedule, uh, and we need to clear out these, just marking them as done. Okay, so now there are no staffing needs. So now if we go back into the console and recreate the new staffing needs based on the estimates being hourly, we should get some things that don't make sense anymore. Yeah. So see how it says 60 weeks here now, because we aren't doing anything to adjust for the fact that these can be hourly. And so it's saying 60 weeks instead. Hey, Mike, thanks for joining. I appreciate it. I hope everybody's having a good Friday. Um, so if we bring up that view, we'll take a look at how that is being done. That staffing needs, it was on both the index and the show. So on index, we're just using pluralize with the quantity and giving it weeks. And let's see how it's happening on the show. Okay, so both the show and the index are working the same way. And one of the things I noticed is on the model, we have this title method where it's saying um, quantity of weeks of skill names for project. So weeks is also there. Um, I'm looking at um, this, and that looks like it's used up here. You can see 60 weeks of Rails. So that's where that's being used. So I think what I want to do is I want to introduce a duration method on staffing need, which what it's going to do is if it's out, it's going to return the right text. And then in the view here, we'll use duration instead of uh, knowing instead of building the logic in the view about hourly versus weekly. So let's go over to our staffing need spec. And what I'm going to do first is modify the title method to do the right thing, because if that's working, then we can build upon from that. So we'll add a context here. And the project is weekly billing. No, it keeps on wanting to complete hourly billing, but this spec is weekly billing. Oops, I went too far. And then we'll add another and you can the staffing need factory, the project factory, the default is weekly billing, but I like to be really explicit in the specs and make sure that the spec has everything that makes this spec this spec. And so because we are going to be changing that behavior, and in the future the factory might change, we want to be explicit that we depend on this spec now being weekly billing. So we expect this to be the same, but I'm going to now copy. Okay. And now this is going to say 2 hours. And when it's hourly billing. Okay. And I expect this to fail. So expected 2 hours, got 2 weeks, which is what we expect. So now we go over to the implementation, and this is where we get to what I was talking about. We'll be able to build on it. So I actually am going to change my approach a little bit. I'm going to replace this call with a call to the duration method. So now before I do that, I want to introduce specs for the duration method. So I'm just going to copy these. And it'll be the duration method. And when the project is weekly billing, returns a duration that includes a duration in weeks. And then this would be just 2 weeks. And this stuff doesn't matter anymore, so we can let the factory handle that, so we can simplify our specs a bit for this spec. So Dimitri, you ask, is a model or some other place where you store some methods that you need is view only? So some people, especially if it grows in size, you want to start not including this stuff or things that are strictly view only in the model itself. And there's a pattern in Rails and in other things to introduce the concept of a presenter. It's basically a class that wraps a model and has um, methods that are used in the view on it. Rails also has the concept of a view helpers built in, which can also serve that purpose. Yeah, Aniket points that out in the chat. Thanks. We do. The reason why I'm putting it in the model is, one, we don't have a presenter yet. For just one or two methods, a presenter might be overkill. The other is I'm actually anticipating that this isn't just a UI concern, that we need to know the duration in those strings in a few different places. And so I don't necessarily want to wrap, like if I'm using this in a mailer or something like that, I don't necessarily want to have to wrap everything in a presenter or to use the right view helpers all the time. So that's my thinking there. Thanks for the question. I appreciate it. We're going to remove these things. Oop, we still need the 2. Okay, so that simplifies that. And now we can run this, and it's going to say there's no duration. Oh, we need to be calling the method we're going to be implementing. So it's going to believe it's going to say there's no duration method. Yeah, undefined method duration. So now we can say def duration. So if project weekly billing, then so this isn't right. This is what auto completed, but we're going to say oh, I messed that up. So we want the quantity, and then the string method for pluralize. I'll bring up the docs just so we can see it together. And I need to look at the docs every once in a while. The text helper method of pluralize and the string version of pluralize work differently. And sometimes I need to remind myself of which way it was. So the view helper of pluralize returns a full string with both the number and the word pluralized. But the string version takes in the count and only returns the name. It doesn't put the number on it. So that means that we need to include the number in the string ourselves. And then we say, so that would be how we would do that. We're gonna do a practice of red-green refactor here. So this is not how I'd write it first pass, but what I'm doing is I'm writing it this way because it's very straightforward. And I'm going to make sure the tests pass so right now they're red, they're failing. Undefined method weak. Yeah, this is a string. Okay. I'm just going to run all the specs just to be sure. So now those red specs went green. Okay, so the title one is now is also failing. So now it's green. So I'm going to refactor this. I'm going to introduce a private method that's not used anywhere called units. And I'm realizing that I probably want to do hourly billing, hour, week. And this is an internal thing, is we also have monthly billing projects where it will also be week. So when I wrote it the other way, Now, so I'm just flipping that in my so that we have those. So now I can write this. So we say units pluralize quantity. We push the conditional further down into the method, um, or into the class, which clears up the top level methods and makes it a little less complex. So that's still green. We're going to go to our title, which is still failing because we're not building on the duration now. So it's still failing. It expected hours, got weeks. So now we can cool. And let's run the whole file. Make sure that it's passing. We have this uh, pending spec. We're not going to go back to that just yet. Cool. So now if we go over here, okay. That's right. We never changed the view. So before we change the view, we want to go to our features. And I actually, to be perfectly honest, I should have changed the feature spec as the very first thing because we want to start on the top layer and then go down with our changes and then back up and make sure all the tests pass all the way back up the chain. And I didn't do that, so I should have done that. So here where it says, okay, we should see 2 weeks. Just getting a handle on the specs. Okay. So, and here we change it to from 2 to we edit something to go from 2 to 3. Okay. So I want to make a new spec. Project is hourly billing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy everything. We're not going to use everything, but I'm going to start from there. So where's our project? Here's our project. We need to say factory bot trait hourly billing that we've got set up. So we've got that. And we've got the staffing need. One project with staffing needs. So this should be let's change this to a more exciting number. Let's change it to 30 hours. So now we should say 30 hours. So we've got coverage on all this other stuff. So I'm going to remove because I just care about these specific things here. And we don't care about the create assignment flow for this, I don't think. And then, yeah, and then we want to take that edit and we want to, um, no, actually, we don't need that spec. That's fine. So we're no longer referring to the staffing need directly. So we're getting this unused variable here. Okay, let's run the spec and see whether it fails or not. I actually think because okay, well, it failed. Expect to find 30 hours in staffing needs account. Okay, so it found 30 weeks. There's 30 weeks there, but not hours. The project we set hourly billing. So I'm pausing because um, I expected that to pass because we already changed the view. Oh wait, no, I stopped myself before changing the view because I didn't want to change the view without fixing the specs. So, uh, hey, Sanskar, thank you for the question. I am working on an internal production application that we have at thoughtbot that is called Hub. It has our internal communication. It also connects to a bunch of different systems that we use, like our external CRM and different systems. It has our whole schedule and how we do scheduling and finance and all that stuff at thoughtbot. So that's what I'm working on. Um, and I also see you asked, how do I navigate between the files and do fuzzy finding among the directory using Vim and VS Code? I will answer that question by calling that out as I work. So yeah, but you're right to identify. I am using Vim key bindings in VS Code. I'm a longtime Vim user, and few years ago switched over to VS Code for the extensions primarily, and because so many people were already using it, so I enabled Vim key bindings, and I'll talk about how I do fuzzy finding. Okay, so we're going to change this to the method that we introduced. And then again on the show. I'm realizing I switched files again without so what I'm doing is rather than using my mouse to switch between files, I'm usually doing one of two things. If I've got the file open already, I'm using the keyboard shortcuts to go in between the tabs with the open files. But I also will often it's I have it mapped to Command P. That's not the default keyboard shortcut for the fuzzy finder in VS Code. I completely forget what the default is, but Command P is what um, I'm used to. So I believe I remapped it, and so then I can do fuzzy finding on file names using Command P. So I'll often use that to jump to things, even if I have the file already selected. And then the other thing that you'll notice that I'm doing is I'm running the specs from the spec file, and that's mapped to Control Command L, and that is an extension called um, Run Rails Run Specs. Gives the ability to run a whole spec file, an individual spec on the line that you're on. That's L. So that's what I'm doing there to automatically run the spec. So that automatically running the specs from your editor with a keyboard shortcut to run just the focus spec that you're currently in right now is a real productivity tip. I really recommend, no matter what editor you use, that you set that up. Cool. Thanks for the question. I hope that fuzzy finding for code among different files. Um, I don't know that VS Code has uh, fuzzy finding. It has the project search, but that's not fuzzy. And it does have regular expressions, but it's not fuzzy. If anybody knows if there's fuzzy finding in the actual file contents in VS Code, definitely drop it in the chat. That's an interesting question. So thanks for asking. Cool. So our spec is passing here. I was doing a lot of talking, so I'm just double checking that it still passes. Okay, so that passes, and we've now got hours being displayed there. I'm just curious what happens. Yeah, cool. That is sort of what I expected. So now what's happening is for an hourly project, Stephanie and I made the decision yesterday that Enzon is going to be nil in that case. And it looks like that is and it's nil because we can't really know how many hours per week something is going to be. We're just going to leave that to the description on the staffing need, and so someone will set their own end date on it when they go to schedule it. So it looks like that generates an error when given that. So I'm going to write a spec for that, but I need to track down where the spec would be. I believe it's going to be commitment spec. And I actually thought, if you had asked me, in fact, I may have said it yesterday, that when given a nil end date, I thought it would default to the current week's end date. That's what I thought the behavior was. So it's the commitment class that does that. You can see, so it's doing something, and starts on the dates method is calling with ends on there to date. Yes, this is Ruby. Thanks for the question. It's a Rails app specifically, and this is Ruby. So let's see if there's a spec for this behavior. Is invalid with an ends date before the start's on. Is valid with the same start and end date. Is invalid. Ends on 30 days. Default ends up to Friday of this week. How is this being created? It's just new with an ends on. So not being passed in does the end of the week. Okay. So okay. So let's write a spec for the behavior that we're seeing. Does not error when so let's run that and see what it actually does. It's entirely possible that it's not going to error. Yeah. So something else is happening there, and it's specifically, let's actually write what's happening. Commitment equals commitment with a new ends on. I suppose you got to spell commitment, right? Oh no, we're just not using it. And then it's the dates method that is causing the error. See if error happens there. Yeah. So expected no exception, got private method called for dates. That's not the error that I was expecting. So that's a private method. So I want to see what is calling that. Oh, I just accidentally skipped over it. Initialize day assignments. And that's being called at the end of the initializer. So this here is what is happening, I believe. But it's also possible that this is what is happening. And when we do that, yeah, no method error, undefined method to date for nil class. So that's what's happening here. It's the same exact error here. And so we've got our spec, and I just want to when a blank. So this is where we're going to fall back on. So what's happening here is we're saying param ends on or default ends on. And this or is only going to kick in here when it is nil. And in our case, it is being passed in as an empty string. So Rails has a method called presence. And what that does is it checks for nil or a blank string. And if it's not nil or a blank string, then it will return itself. Otherwise, it will return nil, which will then trigger this or here. So now the question in my mind is all of these things potentially have this error. And I don't necessarily think we need to write specs for all of them, even though technically we should. We're just not going to because we have to do everything in moderation. And that would be, I think, a little too much. Okay. So let's see. I believe our spec is going to pass now. Cool. So now the page loads and it defaults to the end of this week, which is fine. And then the person can be scheduled. They can put in the time, and then it'll mark the staffing need as complete. We've already got all that functionality in place. I'm going to commit now because I realized I didn't commit in the beginning when we first made the first thing pass. So it's the create staffing needs. So this file, I'm going to just commit it. Subscribe person. Oh, actually, it's the also the subscribable and the interest. Concerns, app models, concerns, subscribable. So what I'm doing here is I'm only committing those things related to the subscribing functionality just so I can get individual commits with the changes that were made, just in case I ever need to go back, or that I will squash before this branches merge. But while we're in active development here, I find it's useful to have individual commits. So subscribe tentatively staffed person to need. And then everything else we did is about, not quite, but close enough, everything about the hourly billing. Okay. So let's go back here. So we've got our staffing needs. We've got everything listed here. And like I called out in the beginning, these are actually all for the same project. And I'd really like this view to be organized by project and not duplicate and group things by project. So it's a little bit easier to say like, oh, okay, this is the staffing needs for this project versus this other project. So let's write a feature spec for that. So here's our spec. I'm just checking to see whether checking to see whether I want to modify this spec or make a new one. I think I want to modify this spec. And part of the reason why is then because all we're really doing is introducing another staffing need for, no, we're going to need 2 staffing needs for one project and another staffing need for another. And this spec, yeah. Okay, let's not do that. Let's copy this spec and we're going to say staffing needs across multiple projects. And we're going to fix our typo. Okay. So we have one project. We're just going to let so we're going to call this project 1. I'll make another project, aptly named project 2. And then we're going to need a different skill. What do we want it to be? Let's do React. And we need another person. So we'll do person 1, person 2. Wait, why do we need another person? No, I was going too quickly. We don't need another person. In fact, I'm not even sure that that person having that skill actually matters for this spec. Okay. So this is where the first staffing need is put on project 1. Those things don't matter. So now we'll do staffing need 2. And this is also going to be project 1, but it's going to be React. and then we'll do staffing need 3, and this is going to be project 2, and it'll be Rails. So we've got project 1, we've got 2 different projects, we've got 2 different skills. Whoops. Like I said, I don't think that that's necessary. And then we've got the staffing needs, 2 which are for the same project and 1 which is for another one. So now I want to write a spec. This should say 2 projects with staffing needs. And I think what we're going to want to see here. So order, specking order, testing order in a feature spec. There's a couple different ways of doing it, but you by default, our helpers are not order based. And so what I think I want to do is pull out the, well, let me just, when in doubt, just write things. So I think I want to see expect page to, yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write it as if order was correct, and it's not going to be. And then that's going to help guide me. And because I'm not actually sure what the syntax will end up with from a order dependent standpoint. So what I should see here is Rails and then React. And then for project 2, I should see Rails, and I shouldn't see okay. So now I need to, these are the 2 different projects we have. This is not at all actually order dependent or making sure that these things are grouped together. So in order to do that, I think what I want to see is within oh, do we have DOM ID selector here? Let's see. No, that is entirely just made up. We do have the DOM ID method being mixed in though, so that'll, so within the a container for the project, I should see these things. And with a container for project 2, I should see these things. And I shouldn't see React. And this should be project 2. Oh, let's bring up the. Did I use 2 weeks for all these things? Oh, I removed it, so it's not there. That's fine. Let's not have it there. Okay. So now we've got our spec written roughly for how I expect the page is going to look, our feature spec. Let's run it. It's going to fail right here, I'm pretty sure, on line 75. And Dimitri, I see your question around showing a spec file for a model. I had one up earlier, but now I see your question. I'll point it out when we get back to it. Okay. So unable to find a link or button, 2 projects with staffing needs. And that is because it actually is going to say 3 projects with staffing needs. That's the first bug because we know that it is saying 3. It's counting the number of staffing needs, not the number of projects. So actually, schedule show. So here's where we're doing that. We're saying it's pretty naive. It's just saying staffing needs size with staffing needs. So that's incorrect. But this is not grouped at all by project. So, you know what? Just to change course a little bit here, we're actually going to be changing the UI for this. There's another design for the UI. And so rather than spending time getting this to work, I'm actually just going to not worry about it because we're going to change the UI and that link is going to go away and it's going to be highlighted up here in a new block. So that'll make things a little bit more straightforward in terms of having to deal with that. So Dimitri, the staffing need this is the staffing need model spec. So we have our specs for the relationships here. We have our specs for the validations, and then we have the specs for the individual model methods. So we were working on this when I introduced the duration method and I changed the title method on the staffing need. And that's when we were working in this file. See, there's the specs for the duration method that we added today. So I hope that helps. Thanks for the question. Okay, so unable to find CSS project 825. So this is the index. You can see we're just looping through staffing needs. So there's a built-in method in Rails for grouping by an attribute in a collection. I just have to remind myself what I think my audio just Sorry about that, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me now. Uh, Please let me know in the chat if you can or can't hear what I'm saying now. That's so frustrating. I apologize. Um, but I believe you should be able to hear me now. Yeah, awesome. Sorry about that. Let me get my screen back up. Okay, and we're back here. So what I was saying was there's a method built into Rails. We can certainly use group by, but I believe that there's a specific method. I could be wrong. In groups, splits or iterates over the array in number of groups. No. In groups of, those are by number. Maybe it is just group by that we want. Oh, group by attribute. That's on the errors. Okay. I think we can write this using group by. We're going to do this right in the controller, and it's eventually going to be refactored to a model that's responsible for presenting things on the schedule that we need to know about. But this is going to get us part of the way there. So we'll rename this staffing needs by project. And then if we go back to the index, so now what we have is we have staffing needs by project. Hey, Sandeep, thanks. We have staffing needs by project. And what we're going to get first is a project out of that. Let me just bring. And then staffing needs. And then so now we can loop through that. And then what we want to do is we want to have the project name be in its own row. And then we can actually make that a link to the project. And we'll span all the columns. How many are there? 1, 2. There's only 2. Yeah, Dimitri pointed out that we're not setting instance variable in a before action. Sometimes I will do that, or we will do that, Dimitri. But this controller is simple enough that I would prefer to just do it explicitly there. I find that I won't extract it to a method or a before action until it starts to get special. Once it starts to get special, then I'll look for ways of drying it up and or extracting it. Thanks for the question. Um, and I'm realizing that we actually don't need to do that because what I just did by putting a row, because we actually have an unused header here. Um, because and so actually we can duplicate the full table for every single project, and that's going to look basically how I wanted it to look. We just include the name of the project right in the table header. So now we're making a table for each project, and then we want that DOM ID that our specs are depending on. So if you're not familiar with the DOM ID method, that's going to like make a project underscore with the ID, with the numerical ID of the project. And so we're going to use that to identify the project. And then we have a row for each staffing need. And we no longer want to include the project name there. Okay. So this may have just done what I was hoping to do. Oh, we need to move the table. Okay, let's see how that looks. So that did what I was hoping. The project name's not as prominent as I was hoping, actually, especially relative to the skills that are being staffed there. So that's not ideal. We can make it a little bit bigger. Let's make it a little bit bigger and see how we like that. Text. We're using Tailwind on this project. I think it's text LG for large text. Yeah, I'm not in love with that, to be honest. Particularly because of the all caps being done by the TD, sorry, the TH class. Text transform uppercase. Let's see if we want to keep on moving forward with putting it in the table header. So I'm just changing so that it's not uppercase. Just trying to get a sense of whether this is a workable style or whether we want to do something different. Yeah, what do you think? I feel like it's getting a little lost. That's what I feel like. Um oh, did I just put bold? Let's try extra bold. Didn't make any difference. Okay, so now if instead we did what I was doing originally just to see how that looks, let's just see how that looks. Instead of it being in a table head, we just do a table row. With a TD and the call span to with those same text things going on. Uh, with a bottom border. The borders by default are a little bit lighter. What do we think? What do we think? I think that another thing that is causing this to not work is the fact that all the links are red. So they sort of like blend in with each other. And these are particularly heavy. So that would be another option is um, to not have this be a link. Yeah, that's a little bit better. In fact, if we were to do that, then we might even go back to putting it in the table header. Let's see how that looks. Okay, I think we're getting somewhere now. So let's do that, and then let's do so that's that. And then I think if we move those in a little bit so they're not all flush, that's gonna work well. I don't know why the padding. Oh, maybe there's already. Nope. Let's see. Oh, maybe there's already that much. We've got padding on the top, padding on the bottom. Oh, it's from this TD first child here. Well, that's going to allow it that allows us to see what it would look like. And I don't think that it helps. Actually, maybe it does help. Let's try it. I think so. Yeah, Dimitri, thanks for the tip around trying the Tailwind. Other projects I work on don't use Tailwind, so I haven't really invested in doing extensions for it. But I really should take a look at that because it would also help answer questions like, is it first or first child? It's first. That's too much. Okay, I think that is enough UI styling for right now. So let's go back and see whether our spec passes now. Okay, so it did not pass. It said it couldn't find the CSS that it was expecting to find for project one. It outputs the HTML here, so we'll be able to go to that HTML. So it didn't find project underscore at all. So let's see if we can see what's going on here. Oh, did I remove clicking through? I did. I removed actually going to that page by accident. Cool. So that passes. Now that does make me want to fix the that. Just take a look. It would be in the schedule control. So here's where we're going to move this stuff to. We're going to move it to this presenter called schedule attention items presenter. And that has rotation requests as well as staffing. We'll add staffing needs. So that's part of why I don't want to change that just yet, because that UI is going to be changing. So that's good. So let's commit. So group, what we just did was group the staffing needs by project. So I'm going to push that. We will, let's take the time to run the full specs. It takes a little while. And while that runs, I'm going to take a break. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Let's say. Got to find the banner. Here we go. Again, thank you for watching. I'll be back in 5 minutes and see you on the other side of the break. Well, I'm back, but the specs are still running. I guess it takes longer than 5 minutes. I've never really timed them before. Well, while those run, I'll just remind everybody that you can drop your questions in the chat at any point. I'm super happy to get them and do my best to answer them about really anything related to design or development, Rails, otherwise, anything you're working on or anything you spot. And if you're looking for a company to help build your web or mobile application, design, build, launch your web or mobile application, or improve an existing application, ooh, we got some failures, then that's where thoughtbot comes in. And you can check us out at thoughtbot.com. And you can just click on the Let's Get Started button up in the right-hand corner and start a conversation with us about how we can help. We don't just do Rails. We do lots of mobile applications, and we do quite a bit of React with TypeScript, as well as not a lot of React Native and iOS and Android first-party native mobile development. Looking forward to seeing what these failures are. Let me stop the music. I think we'll have our results in just a minute. These changes, these failures should be related to what we're working on, because there was no other failures before that were unrelated. So while that runs more, I'm just gonna go over and take a look, see whether there's anything that jumps out at me in terms of now wanting to anything specific to tackle about this. I think things are actually looking pretty good overall in terms of where we're at with this feature and what we need to do. I think the next thing is to move this out of here and into the attention items class. So let's, while those specs run, so right now we just have the concept of that, or the things that require attention on the schedule are rotation requests. So we're going to be adding a we're going to be adding also staffing needs. I'm just looking at the class because I didn't write this class, and I haven't used it yet. It was just introduced like last week or the week before. And so, there's more failures than I expected that we were going to get on this. So that's interesting. So this presenter, it's called schedule attention items presenter, schedule attention. So this is a presenter, so that means that there is a schedule. I'm typing the wrong thing. Attention items presenter spec. Yeah, I accidentally brought up the feature spec for that, which we'll also want to deal with. But so here's the model level specs for that presenter. Okay. So we're going to be modifying these to add. Okay. Okay. So these specs are using let, um, and there are um, so exhibiting one of the problems with let is it's basically scrolling off the top, and now when I'm looking at an individual spec, I can't I can no longer see the things that this spec relies upon, and I don't necessarily know where they're coming from. So, going to want to address that as part of working on this. Well, these specs are taking a while to run. I'm actually surprised. It doesn't usually take this long, or that I know of. So, I don't know if something's going on there, but okay. So we got our spec results here, and it looks like, yeah. So one of the things that's breaking is our specs were um, relying on the project name being there in the link for the staffing need, and it no longer is. So I think we only have, yeah. So there's only one staffing need for this spec, so we can change that. I want to see what the other unable to find link or about and project 706. So this is the same problem. We were relying on the project name being in the link for the staffing need, and it no longer is. Um, so let's schedule. Oh no, staffing need index. So there's a skill names method on the staffing need. So we can do that. I just want to make sure. Yeah, there's only one staffing need. Since there's only one staffing need, I'm not concerned about clicking on the wrong clicking on the wrong staffing need if I just do that. Um, okay. And so what I'm going to do, just so that I don't lose, if I start running a bunch of these specs, I'm going to lose this. So I'm just going to bring up another document here. Oh, with the actual failures. So then we don't lose that stuff. Okay. So let me run this, make sure that that spec passes. Cool. The other one that failed, that was the first thing that we fixed, was this one. Oh, I just accidentally ran the whole file. Well, let's see what happens, how many failures there are. These are all going to be similar or not. This one is. So while that runs, let's take a look at this other. So comment mailer is expecting to be called once and isn't. Um, oh, I see. I wrote this spec a while ago, and actually I didn't realize it was there, so we haven't been checking on it. But this has to do with the commenting that we um, did before. And that is not an important thing to have in the spec because that's not how it actually behaves. The tentatively scheduled person is coming from the estimate, and that's where they're put on. So, uh, oops. So let's make sure that passes. Okay, so everything in this spec is passing now. Let's just verify that. So another interesting error that happened was this one. So we got undefined method estimates for project ID 1820. Projects don't have estimates. uh, so are we accidentally? Ah, yes. It was caught by the specs. We're accidentally. So what's happening here is we're passing into the job the project, and we should be passing in an opportunity, and it should be a one opportunity. And I'm realizing this failure is making me realize so we don't have an opportunity at this point. Um, and so I'm realizing that this functionality is actually living in the wrong place. We don't know when we are updating the CRM, you can see it's here. It's looping through all the opportunities and updating them. We don't really know which opportunity we should be staffing for this project. So this is living in the wrong place, and it really should be in create client and project spec job. So that's great. Our specs caught that problem. We're passing in the wrong thing, and um, we're passing in the wrong thing. So let's go to create client and project spec. Awesome. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to uh, project services spec. Um, and it adds the staffing need from the estimates. Um, we're just going to take this spec, this one, this not being called for updates no longer matters. We're going to bring that over here. And we are going to add for an opportunity with no client or project, it creates the client and the associated project. Okay. There's a lot going on in this job, but here's where we want to add it. So it adds the staffing needs from the estimates. And what we're checking here is that the job is called, and then going to okay. So now we're allowing that job to be called by perform later with perform later um, when the create client and project job is triggered. So now we need, just looking at what setup we need. It sets the project team. We don't need that. So let's just run this spec and see what happens when that. We'll run the spec. We'll see what it fails like. Undefined local variable or method opportunity. Oh yeah, we didn't make an opportunity. I know we need to do that. And I know that opportunity needs a project. Oh wait, no, one will be created in theory. So let's just give that a try. Okay, so what's happening here is the CRM is attempting to be updated, or we're attempting to update the CRM, and it's getting a 404 is hitting a fake, and that doesn't exist in the fake. And so you can see how a lot of these other uh, things are doing. It's faking. It's creating another. The CRM we use is called Freshworks. But so we have a fake Freshworks class, which uses, if you're not familiar with the concept of this kind of fake, um, it actually is a Sinatra Ruby web server, and it spins it up and then mounts it on a port, and then we're just responding to things as if we were the external CRM. And then anything that tries to communicate with the external CRM while our tests run hits this Sinatra app instead. So that's part of what is going on here, or in terms of what's happening. So define method primary sales contact for the account manager. So we've got a lot of dependencies for this spec, a little more than I would like. Unfortunately, I think this is one of those situations where you find yourself just pushing through, bringing in the things that you need. Um, find account by name in order to get to a point where the specs are passing. I'm surprised that there's not something already um, already dealing with that. Okay, so this is Freshwork jobs create or update account. I wonder if instead of the what we were doing, um, we can instead just stub out that so that we're just not calling that job directly in this spec. That might simplify things. That didn't help. We're back to the 404 not found. Okay. I'm trying to just copy and paste and move quickly, in part because I want to get past this, but the reality is I think I need to slow down and look at what's actually happening. So I'm going to take a moment and think this through here. So we've got the if we're stubbing out the client, then that's not going to work. And then so what I've done is I removed what we were stubbing out on the client. So now it has no methods. And I want to see what method. Yeah. Okay. So it's get deal with includes. Cool. So that is what was being stubbed. So now let's run it again and see what the actual failure is. So now it received find account by name. So now we can say, I think we want to return nil there. So I really don't like what's happening in this spec, and the fact that just to test one little thing, we've ended up needing to basically because we have the fake, and because it was not found, we ended up needing to build all this out. So that's the real problem here, um, is that our fake Freshworks doesn't implement something that is being used inside the class. I think we should take a step back and we should actually fix that problem. Otherwise, we're going to end up in a scenario where this is just really messy. So it was get deal with includes, I believe, is what is not supported in our fake. So let's delete that. We should go back to having the 404. And I'm just going to, just because it's easiest, I'm just going to print the path here so we can confirm what the path is that is being attempted to be hit. So it's slash deals. Oh, I think I see what the problem is. There should be an ID here, and there's not. And so I'm guessing it's because the opportunity doesn't have a Freshworks ID. So if we give it a Freshworks deal ID now, okay. So now it is properly hitting the endpoint. You can see it's calling the path. It's got an ID. It's no longer getting the 404. What's happening now is um, the f- the the client is getting back a nil from the API from the Sinatra fake, um, because sales accounts is empty. So now if we go over to our fake and here's what we're returning, and it's that deal includes. So if we go to the with includes, it's um, the path, and then here's where it's that's not where it's happening. Here's where it's happening. So and so it's saying include sales accounts, and then it's expecting to get the sales accounts. So we want to make our fake respond in the right way to that situation. Um, and it's not. See, it's not. Um, so the simplest way we can make that pass is if params oh, includes and then when that's the case, then the API is going to return sales accounts with that. just because I anticipate that this format might be wrong, I'm going to print that. Okay, so now let's run that. And what we should see, okay, so it's sales accounts, first, include sales account. Okay, so I think our Rails log is where the Sinatra output goes, or the other output goes. So let's actually don't see it here either. Just double checking to see whether there's any other things being output. Okay. Making sure, just double checking I'm not missing it. Oh, I suppose it could be. Let's just try outputting the whole params just to make sure that that's not the case, where it's actually nil and it is outputting it in the logs, but we're not. Where is it going? This is annoying. I actually think that there is oh, well, I have a one solution. Let's see what happens if we do that. Well, it didn't it didn't do anything. So the fact that it didn't do anything means that this is actually not being called, which is interesting. We did confirm it's the API deals path, which is deals. It's a get. Oh, I was in the put. Action. So that is incorrect. We were in the entirely wrong Sinatra action. Here's the get that we want, and here's what's being returned. And okay, let's do just a, I'm going to extract this, but if we do def deal includes with the params, and then we say if then we're going to return, actually it's sales accounts as an empty array. Else that, and then we can say dot merge deal includes with the params for the includes, and we can move this out of the way. So let's run that and see how that plays out. Oh, I have a that was an autocomplete typo. Okay, there's a syntax error in fake freshworks. Syntax error was unexpected curly brace expecting a parentheses on line 305, which is the end of the file. That's always super useful. Includes. And then where I edited was here we go. Missing the parentheses. Okay, let's give it another run. Let's see. $500 internal server error. Okay, so we are getting some sort of exception. Let's see. Here it is. This is coming from Sinatra. No method error, undefined method include for nil class. So params I thought it was includes params sales account include. It's just include. So it's just include, and then let's change this to match include. That's I knew it's going to mess up because include is a keyword in Ruby. So that's a little confusing, but let's see if it passes, and then we can worry about whether it's confusing enough to fix or not. Okay, so sales accounts is still coming back. There is no sales account. I think we need to include one. So think if we just include the ID, we'll be good there. So we're building out this fake to respond as the remote API does, but just at the bare minimum to do it. Okay. So we've got these are the params. It's coming through. Include sales account. Um, include sales account. So now in the API client, I'm just going to change this to. I want to see what's coming back. Just and that's going to tell me whether I hooked up and am responding correctly in the in the fake. So what's coming back is deal tags, custom field, sales accounts, array with a hash inside of it. Um, so that's what's coming back there. What is wrong with that? Oh, see how it is uh, inside of the hash, there's deal, then there's a hash inside of that, and that's where sales accounts is. Uh, this API returns sales accounts at the top level, not nested under deal. So this is one of those JSON APIs where it's including the ID within the object, but then you're telling also in your response include these other objects which are referenced in that. So if we go back to our fake and we so we want to do it one level up, uh, where that is. I'm optimistic. I think this might work this time. Nope. Okay, but it's a completely different failure. So we actually may be on the right track. Yeah, we made it past the fake for the CRM. So now that fake is responding like the remote API will, and our API client's not failing. So I'm happy about that. And the failure is it expected the opportunity but got a project, which is awesome. If you remember, like 20 minutes ago, that is what we were trying to fix in the first place. Our code was passing in a project, but is expecting an opportunity, and we wanted to move the code and fix that problem. So now in create client project, I want to look at where that is happening. I'm trying to track down where that's actually happening because I don't see it happening in the spec. We have that and our opportunity, and then create staffing needs. Oh, I know where it's happening. So in project services, we never moved the add scheduling to do method. So now we're removing that functionality. It was still happening down the chain, and now we are sign. Okay. So now we want to pass in the opportunity that we have here. Add staffing needs. Okay. Let's run our spec again. Nice. So we now, when we create a project after something is won in the CRM, that's where the job gets kicked off for that opportunity to create the staffing needs for the associated project that was also created. One thing I want to make sure of is just the flow create. I just want to double check because I was moving. So yeah, so it happens after the project. So by the time it gets here, it's always going to have a project. Cool. Let's commit. We moved the job. There was no longer anything in that conditional, so we removed it. We adjusted our specs to only not expect project name anymore. We removed that spec for the unused functionality around mailing the person when a comment is left, because that is not actually valid. And then there's where our specs moved over. So we changed project services and we never ran the specs. So we're going to run all the specs for the project services and make sure that those are still passing. Cool. So we can just commit that. Create staffing needs from create client project job. Okay, so if you remember right, we were tracking down some failures, and this was that failure that we just fixed. Um, so let's run these feature specs and make sure that they're all passing. I know we fixed some of them, but I don't remember whether we fixed all of them or not. Cool. Um, and we already fixed that. And so let's check this one. Okay, and now, oh, we just ran project services. So as you saw, the specs take a little while to run. So rather than running all of the specs again, right now to verify that we fixed everything that had been a failure before, I am just running this full spec files for the specs that have failed before. And then we'll verify that all those are passing. Meanwhile, I committed and pushed, so the entire spec suite is also running on CI um, while we speak. So, um, so Dyson Returns asks, "Do you do charity work? I have a gem for writing StarCraft 2 AI, 95% there. Need testers." That is a very interesting question. We do charity work, but I am curious how writing a StarCraft 2 AI qualifies as a charity. Um, but we do every couple times a year we pick pro bono projects to work on. The other thing I'll say is even everyone at Thoughtbot has investment time, and that's where we often contribute to open source projects and that kind of thing. So um, you're more likely to yeah, Dyson for the love of Ruby. Yeah, so anyone at Thoughtbot could take their investment time, work on a Ruby gem, open source, that kind of thing, um, for just for the experience of working on it and for learning and improving it. So why don't you drop the link to the project uh, into the chat so we can see it, and maybe someone either at Thoughtbot or maybe someone watching will be inspired, especially if they play StarCraft. I actually don't play StarCraft, um, but I am a big uh, real time strategy player. But I was more of a Warcraft person myself. Cool. So all those specs passed, so we can close this file. Okay, so all those specs are passing. We have about a half hour left in the day today for me. So we're back to extracting the functionality for staffing needs up into the schedule items presenter, attention items presenter. So how is this initialized? It is initialized with a current user and filtered people. And then it's showing whether any of those filtered people have rotation requests. So the staffing needs are going to be shown regardless of um, how the schedule is filtered. We're just going to always show staffing needs up at the top here if there are any. I think. Let me think this through. Do we actually want to do that? That is the idea. I'm actually thinking. Okay. So I think what we'll do is, for right now, we'll continue moving the schedule items presenter or the staffing needs into this presenter, but we're not going to change this. We're going to use that as a way to, so it'll say 2 projects because there is just 2 projects. So we'll initialize it with that. And then, so let's think about the API here. Um, So for the schedule items presenter, I think we're going to want um, staffing needs by project. Let's see what Copilot wrote for us here. It group staffing needs by project. Yeah, this is not what we want at all, which is fine. Oh, you know what? I'm realizing, whoops, that let's take a so the schedule controller. This is done in two places. Schedule controller um, populates the pending staffing needs. Show does pending staffing needs, but if you click through to the staffing needs, you can choose view all and you can view all past staffing needs as well. And that happens when in the staffing needs controller. Oh, that's the staffing needs controller. The scope staffing needs method. And if the parameters is all, then do all, otherwise do pending. So where do we want to the schedule attention items presenter doesn't seem like the right place to do that, but that's actually where the okay. I think what I'm going to do instead schedule controller staffing needs so if we just add a group by project method on staffing need, then we'll be able to use that in the different places that we need it. And we can always move it to the presenter if this continues to evolve that way. So let's do that. Staffing need spec. And what we're going to add is a grouped by project method here. And it returns the staffing needs grouped by project. Let's see what the spec. Yeah, cool. This is what I would expect. So let's run that. Yeah, undefined method group by project for staffing need. So we don't want to call dot all there. That's not what we want to do because we do want this to be chained. Oh, actually, no. I think we do want to call dot all there. Um, so let's run the spec because that the call to dot all will still mean that it can be chained. And if you change it on something that was more limiting, it should carry forward. So that's fine. So we've implemented that, and the spec is passing. Um, and so now if we go to the schedule controller, and we do the staffing needs controller, we can say, if we go over here, there, it's still grouped by project over here. And if we go to the schedule, it now says one project with staffing needs, which is perfect as we click through and there's only one project. So now schedule staffing. That spec should pass where it says when a I thought we had a spec where that was failing before. Um, but I think, oh, here it is. We changed it so that it wouldn't fail. So now changing, oh, actually, what we should do let me, is put it back to 3, show that it does fail. There we go. And now if we put it back to 2, it'll pass. Cool. Okay. I feel good about the decision not to move that into the presenter right now. Um, and then um, this is a small thing, but we don't have too much time. We've got about 20 minutes left. So um, if we, in our spec, scheduling staffing needs spec, so scenario is there are no staffing needs. So this is when there are none. And basically, we need a person. We don't need a project. We don't need staffing needs. So we visit the schedule and we expect the page. So right now it says 0 staffing needs. And what we want it to change it to is to say no staffing needs. Uh, one, no projects, sorry, no projects with staffing needs. No projects. Okay, so that's what we wanted to say. Undefine local. Oh, Oh, I see why we need that department. Actually, I don't think we need that. Let's see. Okay, cool. So we're looking for no projects with staffing needs, and we got uh, 0 projects with staffing needs. See there. So scheduling, schedule, show. So this is a little of a silly thing, but it's the kind of thing that it would really bug me as a user if it said 0 when there was none. Um, and so if this is none, and then no projects with staffing needs. I think this is going to pass. Undefined local variable or method staffing needs. Did I accidentally? It's an instance variable. Cool. So let's see that in action. We got one project with staffing needs. If we mark them all as done, and if we go to the schedule now, no projects with staffing needs. Let's bring one of them back. And we've got that one project with staffing needs. Cool. So that's working like we want. When there is I'm curious if we go to staffing needs show, if we're showing a person, if there's someone on this. No, we're not. So let's do that, and that'll be the last thing we do before wrapping up. So it is possible that a staffing need is already associated with person, meaning they're basically penciled in for that. And right now, that's not being shown anywhere. So let's get that started. User schedules a staffing need. Staffing needs across multiple projects. User edits. Okay. So let's do the particular case where the person is tentatively scheduled for a project, and then when we go to schedule them, they're automatically populated in the form. a person is tentatively staffed already. Okay. So what that means is there is already a person on the staffing need. We're using the person that we've already got here. Um, and we visit the index. We see that there's one project with staffing needs. These things don't matter. We're going to click on it. And what we should expect is that the page to have content, person name. And then when we click on create assignment, we expect the person field to equal the person ID. And then when we create the assignments, then staffing, this doesn't matter. Cool. And we should see no projects with staffing needs, 0 projects. Awesome. Okay, so let's run these specs. It's going to fail. I project it's going to fail. So it expected to find the person's name on the page, and there's not, which is exactly what we had expected. So the staffing needs show page. If there is someone already scheduled or tentatively scheduled, we want to show that. If staffing need a person so we'll call this tentatively staffed, and we have a okay. The person link helper links to a person but includes their image and a thumbnail and stuff like that along with them. So that's why we want to use that link helper. So now the spec progressed to the stage where it's going to finalize the staffing, and it's checking to see whether the person was selected in the dropdown, and it's not, which is what we expected. So we're going to change a few different things here. So first of all, let's go to the commitments controller. This is where that's happening. And let's check to see whether it can accept a person to be set. It can. See, the parameters permitted are person ID. So that's fine. Then we go to the staffing needs show and the create assignment button. Oh, yeah. I can do that. So without needing to load the person or the project, we can get its ID. So that's actually a good way to do that. So I believe that's all we need to make this spec pass. So let's see if it does. Perfect. So now let's This is staffing need 1. Let's set it up in the controller. Staffing need dot first. Yeah. Update person to person dot first. Cool. So now if we go here, tentatively staffed, here's the person. And if we go to create assignment, then person's automatically selected in that dropdown. And if we just create that, then now there's no projects with staffing needs. It's a little awkward to have nothing there, but awesome. I think that's a great place to wrap it up for today. If anyone's got any last minute questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll take a few minutes to answer them after I commit these changes. I'm just going to diff and look. And show tentative. Awesome. Carl, I just saw your comment. Lowercase with would look nicer. If I remember right, there was a reason why we did that originally. I think you're right. Let's change it real quick. Oh, it's not going to be a quick change. Let's see if we can make a quick change. If we do a global find and replace, whoops, case sensitive, replace this with this. So that changed that. Let's see if our spec still passes. Spec still passes. We've got the lowercase with there, no projects with staffing needs. Are you happy, Carl? I hope you're happy. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for watching. Hey, we made it through the week. We had 2 great pairing sessions yesterday, today. We had a great batch of people pairing on some React this morning who live in Europe. So we're keeping up the pace of streaming. Stay tuned for stuff in the future, and I hope you have a great weekend. As I said, thoughtbot, we not only do Rails, we do a ton of Rails work, improving existing applications and creating new ones, but we are a complete product team where we design, build, and launch new applications, web and mobile applications, and improve existing applications. So even if you're a big company or a small company and you've got a web or mobile application and you need help with it, need help scaling it, you're scaling quickly, we help do those kinds of things as well. We've been using Rails I've been using Rails since it first came out in 2005. And so we're here to help. So get in touch, thoughtbot.com. Just click on the button in the upper right-hand corner. And thank you so much for watching. Happy holidays. And I hope everyone has a great weekend and beyond. So I'll see you soon.